Also joining us on the recent kidnap of more than 100 students in Tegina community in Niger State is the Secretary to the State Government, Ibrahim Ahmed Matane. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Secretary to the State Government, Ibrahim Ahmed Matane, thank you very much for joining us. Yes, quickly, on Friday, on the morning show on this station, we had a conversation with the head teacher, proprietor, and the parents of some of the students that were kidnapped last week, it's about a week now, in Niger State. And one major point that came out of that interaction with the parents and the teachers is that there has been no expression of empathy, sympathy, no serious interest has been shown in the plight of these students, some of them 4-year-old, some 2-year-old. And, all of us were shocked that this is the case. But here you are, Secretary to State Government, Niger State. Are you guilty as charged?
Well, thank you very much. First, let me express the anguish of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Niger State, Alhaji Abubakar Sani Bello, on that very tragic incident at Tegina, where, like you have rightly expressed, very young children, were picked, from Islamia school. Some of them 2 years, 3 years, and the oldest actually is about 14 years. There were over 100, and that came, so suddenly. Nobody expected it, nobody anticipated it. Nobody thought that the bandits would go as low as to really go into an Islamic school and just pick, young children. I mean, it's emotional trauma, both for parents and, of course, for the government. It's emotional trauma because, imagine your daughter of that age, picked, and then she just left home, and she never came back. She's currently in the forest somewhere else that you can never know. But as a responsible government, of course, there has always been this emotional, sensation about government's lack of concern, government not making noise and showing empathy. But let me tell you, on the day that that incident happened, we had no less than 5 different attacks at different locations with some level of severity. But the Tegina one was worse because children were involved and they were picked. Immediately, His Excellency, called for emergency security meeting so that we'll be able to deal with, some strategic actions on how to deal with the matter. Because you recall, this is not the first time we are having that experience. The first one, of course, was, with our boss, government boss, being run by the Transport Authority, where over 50 of the passengers were intercepted and picked, and kidnapped. We went through, that trauma, but eventually government, was able to get them out, unhurt, and we're happy that today, they have reunited with their families. Suddenly after, I think just about 2 days after, we had, the Kagara trauma again, where, bandits went into, a quiet, secondary school in the night and picked, our children. And again, went through that difficulty, but eventually we got them back. So we believe that, we adopt the same strategy as always, to deal with this matter, and we are not making too much noise about it. Of course, for the parents, like I said, it's very emotional, it's very touching, it's tragic, and we share in that anguish. But we have been doing everything as a government, responsible government at that matter, to do with it, without having to make noise on television or radio. But we know what we're doing. We've done it before, and I believe His Excellency is not complacent. He's going to go also do it again this time. And all of these things that have happened, we know on several locations we've lost lives, we've lost, communities have been dislocated, we have lost so many assets. But, this one has just been highlighted because we're dealing with, some young children in their large numbers, in school. But government is showing empathy. We don't need to speak so much about it, but we know what we're doing. And on a television or on a radio, you do not come out to bring out, in details, strategic actions we are taking because it involves security. But we're doing everything that we're doing. We are deploying every resources that we're deploying to ensure that, these children are returned, unhurt so that they can, reunite, with their parents.
Well, I mean, one major criticism against the state government is that the governor of the state traveled a day after, it was reported that these pupils had been abducted. And nobody has heard from the governor since then. Is that part of the strategy of keeping things quiet?
Well, people talk about whether the governor had to go on air, but you recall that the deputy governor had been on air. He had called, for a press briefing, to update, the media agencies, the media outfits on what was going on. Of course, this is clearly under the strict instruction of the governor, so that, he allows his men, his support, his officials to do what they're supposed to do, and liaison, the security agencies. I chair and coordinate, security activities, and believe me, we have spent barely no time, to deal with this matter. We meet almost every other day to review our strategy, to make sure that, whatever we are doing, we do not want to also create a collateral damage, that people would, again, at the end of it, say, why did the government, take, this position? So we're being extremely careful, to deal with this matter. The governor is on top of it. He's on daily basis, getting information, liaising with, some concerned interest, so that we'll be able, to deal with this matter, so that, parents, can be, their emotions, will come back, to them so that they'll be able, to, again, focus on their lives. You know that, in the last 1 week, we have suffered, different attacks in different, locations. Just about 2-3 weeks ago, the people that have been dislocated, about 150 communities, they all moved into Mina. And within no time, His Excellency, deployed resources, coordinated it, and all of them are now back to their communities. So this is the kind of approach, the governor is taking. And of course, nobody would have done, more than what he is doing. I know that he doesn't even, he hardly sleeps, just to ensure that, he takes everything, he deploys everything within his own powers, within his own resources, so that Niger State will remain secured.
Well, the parents, one of the points raised by the parents is that they've been asked to pay a ransom of about 250 million or so. And so far, they've been able to raise just about 10 million. And they made a point that the state government has made it very clear to them that the state government will not negotiate with bandits. It's been about a week now since these children were abducted. Is that truly the position of the government? No negotiation, no ransom, whatever will happen could happen, while the state government is trying to liaise with the security agencies.
Of course, in every situation like this, you look at the kinetic approach as well as the non-kinetic. If you're talking about negotiation, of course, we will negotiate. But in terms of paying ransom, we don't pay ransom as a policy. Why? Because we have seen, some backgrounds as to where you negotiate, you pay ransom, and these bandits go back, to use that ransom, to arm themselves more and become, more nefarious and more, emboldened. So we're not going to pay money, as a form of ransom. But in terms of negotiation, if you want to hear that, that's exactly what we're doing. And we're doing it without having to come out, publicly to say this is what we're doing. But we are doing it all the same.
But what level of cooperation or collaboration exists between the Niger State government and the various security agencies? Because one of the parents raised the point that these children, we don't even know the exact number. We've been getting different figures in the various reports, that they were made to trek for a very long distance into the bush. And yet there was no security, agent or agents, to intercept the movement or to at least provide some kind of quick response.
Dr. Ruben,
Yes.
these are very classified, security details. Our parents may not necessarily know what the security agencies might be doing. Certainly, they are doing so much. They are still on top of it. They are reviewing their strategic options. But like I said earlier on, they are also being extremely careful not to cause collateral damage. We have seen it before. We are in it every day. Let me tell you, we have lost so many lives in many communities. Security agencies are working around the clock, deploying, their human capital, deploying equipment and assets. But we know that Niger State is so large. You know that we are 10% of Nigeria's landmass, and a lot of these communities are living in forested areas. So, of course, we have found that many of these bandits found sanctuary in these forest estates. So they are overstretched. We do know that. On the day that they came to Tegina, I wouldn't want to disclose how many policemen are actually at duty post. That is not enough to really deal with such with such encounter. So, of course, the security agencies had to take some strategic options to be sure that they still protect the lives of these young children. They guarantee some forms of security. There are times when security agencies, maybe Air Force, will want to take certain actions, but it doesn't want to do it because in the course of doing it, it might escalate to some other innocent locations. So these are some of the things, the challenges we're facing. But we are not daunted. We are not complacent. We continue to do whatever is necessary. And the governor is on top of it, like I said, to ensure that, these children are back, to their families, unhurt.
Well, the proprietor of the school, I think his name is Idris Umar, made a point in the course of our conversation with him on Friday that nobody, no government official has even visited the school. The school is in Rafi local government area, and no phone call from any state official. Why is that so? Because that will fall under, maybe non-kinetic steps that the government could easily have taken.
Well, thank you very much. I wouldn't want to interrupt you. Yes, we have had that, we have also followed it, we monitored it, but that's not completely true. The first directive His Excellency gave was to the chairman of the local government to go and interface with the school authority and also interface with the parents that are available. Don't forget that some of these young children are actually coming from not necessarily in Tegina. They are also coming from other locations in the local government. And that was the first point of interface, to ensure that the local government is on top of it as directed and being an official of government. And the councillors from all the wards also paid a visit to the school and the school authority to also show this empathy that you talked about, and to also show the presence of government. All these things we did, not that they did it in isolation with His Excellency's directive or His Excellency's knowledge. They did it based on his own directive. And that was the first thing that we did. The second one, of course, was that we needed to look at this security situation, give it a bigger picture beyond just Tegina. There are a lot of escalated activities in the adjoining local government, like Wushishi, and some other locations. So, of course, government, has directed official presence, through the chairman of the local government, and I believe he has done that. In terms of knowing the exact number of, pupils that have been kidnapped, of course, typical of our Islamia schools, you do know that, it is not a really conventional, public school that we do know, Western education. Some children just leave home with perhaps, wanting to go to their neighborhood and eventually ended up, in the Islamia school. Some would claim that they had gone to the Islamia school, they eventually didn't go. So that is why, even for the head teacher, it's very difficult for him to confirm exactly what number, had, been, kidnapped. But we are tracking on this. We are following up. We are every inch of it, we are following up to know, where the location of the children are and, their state and everything else. But like I said, this is not, a space, to disclose this. because it's highly classified. Thank you, Doctor.
Yes. Before now, the governor of the state, Alhaji Abubakar Sani Bello, raised the alarm that 42 communities were no longer safe in Niger State. And then in the course of this discussion, you pointed out 150 communities, which means that the situation has worsened since the governor first raised the alarm. Is there any community in Niger State that is safe at all? Because you said people from 150 communities had to troop to Mina before they were later rehabilitated. Is there anywhere in Niger State that is really safe?
Well, thank you, Ruben. We have 25 local governments, and where we are having these major escalated security challenges are in just about 5 to 6 local governments. And these local governments, are actually vulnerable because of the shared border with some states where we also have this issue of banditry, kidnapping, and cattle rustling. I'm talking specifically, on Munya local government that borders with Kaduna, Rafi local government, and Shiruru that also border with Kaduna, Mariga local government that borders with Zamfara and parts of Kebbi State. And of course now we have actually gotten 2 other local governments, just some isolated communities also involved in this the presence of banditry. Here parts of Rijau, and then recently part of Ushishi, and a bit part of Mashigu. So these are just maybe about 5, 6 local governments out of 25 local governments that are experiencing this continuous criminality by the bandits in the manner they conduct these atrocities in communities. So of course, and that's why we are paying attention, and that's why one of the things we're doing is for a more coordinated action, coordinated and sustainable action, and so that we can get rid of this banditry, kidnapping, and all acts of criminality. And of course, we are also thankful to the support for the support we're getting, and the cooperation we're getting from the federal government in terms of the security personnel that are working with us, day in, day out, to ensure that we deal with this with this monster that is banditry.
Well, there's this talk about keeping schools safe, the Safe School Initiative in Nigeria. The other day it was a government secondary school in February. Now, a week ago, it's the Saliu Tanko Islamia School. What efforts are being made in Niger State to make schools safe?
Let me say, were it not for the proactive measures we've taken for the safe schools, probably the situation would have been worse. Government college, Science College, Kagara was immediately that incident happened, we took measures. And these measures is what guaranteed the safety of our schools today. And we continue to consolidate on those laudable initiatives. Again, I'm not going to disclose what we're doing, but I can tell you, that these measures we've taken are paying off. They've actually paid off. In Tegina alone, you probably have about 2, 3 secondary schools. If not for the measures we've taken, probably those bandits would have actually attacked those schools and probably picked our children. But we've taken measures, and these are short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures, to protect our schools and to guarantee their safety. And we are doing it all across, the state. We know that we have done enumeration of vulnerability assessments of all these boarding schools, the day secondary schools, and including, the primary schools. And that is the measure we're taking, and we consolidate on that so that our children, will remain safe. Of course, Islamia school is not within, the public government public school. It's a community school, and unfortunately, this has happened. But we also put an eye, to ensure that even those kind of community Islamia schools are well protected. Thank you.
One suggestion that people have been talking about, the Safe School Initiative have been making, is that many of these schools are without perimeter fencing, and that there is need to fence those schools, and in addition also provide security in those schools. Those measures that you have taken, say in the short term, have you considered, fencing some of these schools round, and also ensuring that there is adequate security, particularly in schools that have boarding houses?
Thank you very much. Let me say, I'll give you this, just a bit of the things we're doing. Of course, we have profiled all our schools. Profiling would mean that, what are the risks factors, that would expose the school to this act of criminality. For every single school, we have done that. And we have done it, jointly with the security, agencies, and they gave us a report. And on the basis of the report, we are now putting these, measures that will guarantee, the safety of schools. Of course, fencing is one of them. In fact, it's the first. We have found, some schools that are not fenced. They are vulnerable. There are some schools that are not highly vulnerable. They are fenced. So you have a mix of all of this. And what we're doing is to take every school, in isolation and deal with it in partnership with the communities. So that there will be ownership, there will be participation, and of course, we can share in some of these, measures together. Because, as you do know, 70% of our communities are not policed. And of course, when situations like this arise, what do? They have to resort to self-help. And in doing a self-help, of course, they are already, well prepared and well grounded on how to, respond. And that's the kind of thing we're teaching them. And let me add, as part of, this initiative, and Niger State is one of those states that is actually leading in this direction, building a vigilante corps that can actually help and work with the conventional security agencies, to deal and protect, our communities, including the schools that we're talking about. As of today, our vigilantes are among some of the best trained, and if not for their support, the situation would have been beyond, what you can imagine today. We are going to continue to support them. We are going to continue to build their capacity. We're going to continue to build their mobility so that they'll be able, to support, in the absence of conventional security, they can be able to protect our communities, because we believe that is the most sustainable option that we have. Thank you.
Okay, before we go, Mr. Matane, I would just like to know whether there has been any attempt by the federal government of Nigeria directly to see what assistance can be provided beyond whatever collaboration you have with the security agencies, or the federal government is just treating this as a problem for Niger State.
Well, thank you very much. Probably if you have followed the trend, His Excellency, the governor, has been on so many consultation. He has visited virtually every head of security agencies in the country, the service chiefs, and they have given. He has met with the president several times, on these matters, and of course we've been getting very positive responses. We believe that we are building this gradually, but you see, as a country, the country is largely challenged on so many grounds when it comes to security. But we are getting the attention of federal government in terms of consolidating the gains that we have put up as far as security is concerned. And we believe that because of the centrality of Niger State, because of its strategic location and importance, we believe that federal government will continue to support us. And of course, they're doing it, not just for Niger, but for the sake of Nigeria. If you look at the location, every person that is coming from the southwest or the southeast will have to pass through Niger. Anybody coming from the north will have to pass through Niger before getting to his next destination. So Niger is so important that attention has to be paid, to it in terms of security, peace, and tranquility, for the state and for the nation.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much. Mr. Ibrahim Ahmed Matane, Secretary to the Niger State Government, for joining us on today's edition of This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.